The markets rise further and further. The first time in the history, the Dow Jones Index broke the level of 20,000 points. In a week when Donald Trump starts to run the US like its own company, decree for decree, while the world holds its breath. And these are the topics of our today's index update. A global view on the financial markets. Suddenly we talk again about inflation, and Donald Trump think that he can turn back the wheel of globalization. But despite all that, the equities rise further. And so for the Werthstein Institute, the likelihood of a correction, of a bigger correction, is higher now. And the result, the Werthstein Index continues to decline. Giles Keating in London. How afraid we have to be about inflation today?
Well, that inflation is picking up. You look at the US, I mean, despite the strong dollar, you've got the effect of rising commodity prices, oil and copper, and of wages starting to go up. And then you look at Europe, look at the UK and Germany, inflation rising in both countries because you've got that combination of a weak currency together with those higher commodity prices and again, wages going up. And it's spreading to China as well.
Okay, but in the last few years, we have created the deflation ghost. Now prices start to rise. Not good either?
Well, I think it's not that good. We wanted to get rid of deflation, but the danger is we create too much inflation. And that really does put the Federal Reserve in the US under increasing pressure to perhaps even accelerate the pace at which it raises interest rates.
Robert Ruttmann in Zurich, do you agree with Giles Keating?
Not completely, because I think what we're seeing now, rather than catapulting up inflation, are easing fears of deflation. Remember that we're coming out of 2 years of depressingly low inflation, especially in the Eurozone. So news of an uptick in inflation is actually a positive sign.
And what is your opinion on the general financial market?
Well, these markets are none in which I personally would want to be invested in right now. There are 3 reasons for that. Number 1, valuations. Valuations are extended quite significantly. Global markets trade at a 15% premium to their long-term average. That's expensive. Secondly, economic growth is still muted, and this in the context of tightening monetary policy. And third, perhaps most importantly, I believe we're living in a new reality that is defined by increased protectionism and the growing risk of the outbreak of a trade war in 2017. For these reasons, I would not invest at this point in time.
Yes, Robert, I agree. I mean, we've seen already new claims and even action into protectionism, and that doesn't bode well for the market, I believe. Furthermore, if I look at the Schiller price data, I can see that prices are really high compared to a recent valuation and even counting in earning growth prospect and upward revision. So I'm really cautious there.
Robert Halver, Head of Capital Market Analysis at the Bader Bank. What is your opinion on the current situation of the financial markets?
I'm positive about the financial markets and especially the equity markets. We have a President Trump. You can disagree with him morally, but if he does something for the US economy with tax cuts, infrastructure measures and new debt, and that spreads to the entire global economy, the European stock markets and especially Germany will profit from it. So my vote for the financial markets in an initially volatile but generally positive year is 8.
Robert Halver votes with an optimistic 8, which is not included in the Werthstein Index. This is created by the Werthstein Institute's members. So please start to run.
Well, I'm afraid the bout of protectionism is hitting all the markets, and therefore I'm afraid I have to confirm my vote of 4.
I would actually even tend to be a little more pessimistic and give it a 2.
Well, my vote stays at 2. And if you combine that with Robert, who's also at 2, and Valerie at 4, that gives an average of 2.7 for the Werthstein Index this month. And that's a decline from last month's, which was 4.
The Werthstein Institute and its members are a bit more cautious than a month ago. So let us look on 2 risk factors in the future. Giles Keating in London, how unpredictable is Donald Trump?
Fairly unpredictable. I think we've seen the Europe potentially under threat from changes to the US tax code, which could actually subsidize US exports. And also, I think there's the threat of anti-dumping actions, which could hit individual companies. Although I don't think it's likely that there'll be generalized tariffs affecting everybody. Beyond Europe, China is obviously under pressure, where there's not only perhaps risk of a trade tensions, but even of military tensions in the South China Sea. And then we've had the whole row over immigration. And also we've seen ups and downs for the pharmaceutical industry, which has been told to cut prices, but at the same time been told it might get quicker approvals.
Okay, Giles, but the market is not pricing in these risks in the moment. The first week when Donald Trump started to run the White House, the Dow Jones Index broke the level of 20,000 points. And for that, the rally, what starts with Ronald Reagan beginning in the 80s, continues until today. That means the Trump rally is still in place. But what about the valuations? Are we overvalued now?
Well, I think the US valuations do look fairly high. They're not crazily high, but they are fairly high. In Europe, they're a bit more cautious. So in a sense, that's good news. But I think if you put it all together, although the valuations are by no means unusual for this stage of the economic cycle, there are growing risks. We just don't know what will happen on protectionism. And perhaps even more important, we don't know exactly how fast the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates. And all of that could mean downside for the markets.
Inflation is back, protectionism and a high valuation of equities. That sounds absolutely not like a mix what is good for the further development of the stock market. And so the Werthstein Index continues to fall. We are looking forward how equities will develop in the next 4 weeks.